r/ask Reddit. How would humanity change if all humans' life expectancy was significantly increased, let's say to around 500 years? People tend to get stuck in their ways after like 30 years or so. So, you could expect the same social policies to be in effect for 10x longer. If this life expectancy change occurred in the 15th century, we'd probably still be having public beheadings. It depends on the aging. If their youth and midlife get elongated with it, then society could utilize them for centuries. Population and feeding would certainly be a huge issues. Quickly the world would become overrun. But that again is considering if we remain fertile to scale. If we still only have 30-40 years of fertility, then that might not be as bad. Murder rates would spike as adult children living with their strict traditionalist parents would eventually lose their shit. Less people would be concerned about healthy eating lifestyle because they would live to be 420 years, going by lifespans of unhealthy people to healthy people right now. There would be a lot to think about. People will care more about global warming. I think the older generation would care much more about climate change and its consequences, because they all would experience it and not just the younger generation. Look, I'm working on it. It may not seem like it in your narrow mortal perspective, but this kind of operation takes an unprecedented level of commitment and organization. I'm entitled to a little break from time to time, aren't I? Fear not, mortal. You have my assurance that I will not be satisfied until death itself has been eradicated. If it worked for me, it will work for you. I cannot promise you'll still have organs or a complete consciousness, but we'll table that for a tentative phase 2. 5 times as many people. Less pressure to marry young or have children. I feel like even if it's estimated that humans would be able to live to 500, we would never be able to see it because the earth would be giving up on us much sooner before then. I'd explore more career options. It would be cool to specialize in like 50 things than 2 to 5 things. Cool, so many more years to hear wow you're 238 and still haven't had kids yet. What are you waiting for? Probably a lot more political violence, both from people in power to keep others under control, and from underrepresented people that have no hope of just waiting for their oppressors to die naturally. Science would either advance more quickly, because people have more time to learn and experiment, or would be cracked down on hard by those in power, so the progress doesn't threaten their power base, or it would stagnate if the old folks are unable to discard their preconceptions. I'd expect aristocracy to be much more entrenched, maybe in the form of economically powerful families. Relationships. Most people would probably enter polyamorous relationships or not be exclusively monogamic in their marriages, if they even married at all. Because even with the current lifespan we still see cases of cheating. So why should I believe that monogamy would still stay relevant in a long-lived species? People would have more time to dedicate themselves to their crafts, hobbies and work if they also had extended youth as well. With this lifespan you can bet that many people would try to learn a lot of things, instead of what most do nowadays, that is basically focusing on either what they love or what they can do. Society. More time to live also means more time to find new discoveries and time to be able to talk about issues that exist. Although I don't see politicians and diplomats becoming better at their jobs, prison time would need a revision since double digits would be nothing for someone that can live for hundreds. We would really start to worry about nature, because everything bad that could happen would still happen in our time, not the time of our descendants. People would wait longer to have kids, and they would most likely be able to do all the things that they want to do. Saving money would be a priority for some, and others would be likely to spend more frivolously. The entire institution of marriage would change. This is predicated on humans reaching maturity, I know, in their 20s 30s. If so, then marriage would occur later, and I believe that there would be fewer children of these marriages. Why get married in your 20s if you have another few centuries to play? People in theory could have a couple marriages a century. One could be for love but others for genetically optimal children. Following that, another is a business arrangement. I think you would find that relationships themselves would lose their permanence. You wouldn't have lifelong friends because 500 years of someone is a lot to take. Population would crash because people would explore. Humanity would go out to the solar system and beyond because what's a 10-year journey if you live for 500? These are just some initial thoughts. 100-year-old would be considered a teen young adult. I think people will pick an age and cap themselves then. After year 250 I think I would be bored and feel like I did my job. Homelessness would increase, as would the number and array of injuries they sustain, whether from accidents or just being unable to get proper nutrition and take care of themselves. You'd have some people rolling into the ER who are basically scarred. Lumpy potatoes with a pulse. Boomers still don't retire. 20-year presidential terms. What, you had sexual intercourse with that 89-year-old minor? Hope the police won't find out. Shame on you. Imagine if Henry VIII was still running England. People would compete to see who has the most money age 500, not 70. Invention and evolution of technology will be fast. Obvious stuff about overpopulation aside, I think you'd see a lot more existential crises. People get to wondering about the meaning of life with our relatively short time span on Earth. The only thing that gets most people out of this rut is that life is so short and death is so long and final, that the answer most come to is that you just have to live for today, regardless of what the meaning of life is. But what would this look like with this elongated lifespan? Let's say we keep with 25 years of school and 25 years of retirement. That is 450 years of working all day every day. You have kids and raise them, but that'll only be a few short years of your life that you have young kids. So do people just start going through cycles of having a new set of kids every couple of decades? In the workforce, how do people progress? If the person in front of you has 400 years left of life, do you wait for them to retire just to work a few years until your own retirement? People would accept way higher risk for the poor, and the rich would actually give a shit about the future. The condom industry would have to increase tenfold. We'd probably start having kids later, when we're around 190 or so. So many confused grandmas at the mess stop. Our tree growth metaphors would need a complete reworking. Generational battles will probably become much more common than now. I think there will probably be specific ages lobbies trying to get as much influence as possible. Edit. Spelling. We would all be serfs from the moment of birth to the 500-year-olds in the ruling class who have consolidated heretofore unattainable levels of political power. Climate change would suddenly be a big deal. The world would starve to death before enough people got that old. We'd all be blind, deaf, senile idiots. Amplifon will become the world's most powerful company. A lot more suicides. People would be having significantly more butt sex. Overpopulation of human damage environment. The rich and powerful would be in outer space and the poor will be left on the planet. No one would be happy. Retirement age would skyrocket but the pension would be pretty sweet. Bad, I'd say. Probably overpopulation in a decade. People would start caring a lot more about the environment. Include myself. If you think the class system is bad now, wait and see what some of the top wage earners were done after 300-400 years. I think the longevity would actually stifle some of our growth as a species. Part of who we are is dealing with change. I suspect lifespans in the 500-year range would actually slow us down and solidify the various societal classes. Soil and green. Extreme overpopulation. Too much for the planets to handle. People would probably be more reckless but can actually enjoy their youth. But it would be pretty exhausting living so long and there might be a higher suicide rate because living for that long is too much for some. I guess there would be less problems. Overpopulation and world hunger would be a problem already somewhere in the 500-1000. People would get sick of each other, bored with the same old. Imagine, say, working in an insufferable office job for 450 of those 500 years. We'd all be dead from overpopulation and destroying Earth. Boomers would cause way more damage. Society would probably be more safety conscious and bubble wrapped in general. A lot of what we do regularly, like crossing the street, comes with a risk that is small enough that we accept it. Because the total lifetime risk is still acceptably small relative to our lifespans. If we lived 5 to 6 times as long. However, the lifetime odds for many of those risks being realized would increase to the point that the cost-benefit balance tips the other way. Driving would probably be a very different phenomenon. Nutrition too. I still wonder whether we'd keep crossing the street the way we do now. Kids. Suicide rates would skyrocket. Imagine having to wait 465 years until you could retire. More large-scale, long-term plans about space, science, pollution and politics. One word. Overpopulation. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. 166-year mortgages. On cars. They sure don't make them like they used to. Used to that your car would last you 50 years. Now you are lucky if you get a solid 20. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for daily awesome videos. Feel free to like the video if you love it, and comment down below for suggestions on the next video.